Hi, guys. Welcome to the Simple Doesn't Mean Easy podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Visser, and we are here every Monday and Friday working at simplifying things in our lives, just a little bit at a time, one day at a time. I'm glad you're here. And today's a fun episode because I am talking with a longtime friend, Lisa Bass of Farmhouse on Boone. The really crazy thing about this episode, I probably should explain because I don't even remember if it comes up like what time of year it is or if you'll know in our talk. Lisa and I recorded this over the summer. Like I think it was maybe end of summer, early fall, maybe. I can't even remember for sure. So it would have been, because now it's March that this is releasing, would have been 6 months ago, probably. and um, I knew we were scheduling it ahead of time, and I had plans for a whole series that this was going to relate to. And then we decided to not do series here on the podcast. So basically, it kind of just sat in limbo for a little while, waiting for other things to fall in place that didn't. So I'm excited to finally be releasing this. I think you're going to love it. Lisa is sitting down with me and we're talking about fresh flower, her experiences with it, and just some great stories I think you're going to love. And by the way, if you followed Lisa for a long time and you know her, stick with us till the very end because you're going to see a side of Lisa you've probably never seen, answering some random questions and some fun talk going on. So stick with us till the end. And what else did I want to tell you? I know I had a few other things. Okay, well, since we're talking about flour, I should tell you if you go to solelyrested.com/flour, you can dive into all of my free resources helping you with fresh flour. If this is a new topic to you, or if you have I don't know, questions. Maybe you've used it, but you get a little confused about some things. I have a full e-course there walking you through lots of details about fresh flour. So go to solelyrested.com/FLOUR. Also, please take a quick second to go leave a review on Apple Podcast or wherever you listen in, and it helps a lot with the show and the algorithms. So I greatly appreciate every single review. And we're still doing a giveaway for the amazing cookbook called Love Language of the South, written by Stacey Lynn Harris. She was our guest in our last episode. So you even have a chance at winning that amazing cookbook if you take a second and go leave a review. Um, what else? Oh, the only other thing I think I want to tell you is that Lisa and I do talk about some of her great courses that she offers. And what else do we talk about? Anything that we're talking about that you might want links to, I'm actually going to have over on solelyrested.com, and then search for Lisa Bass, and all the information about this episode, including notes on fresh flour and things that we discuss, will all be there for you. So go to solelyrested.com and search Lisa Bass. Okay, let's dive in. So, Lisa, when I thought about a few people that I would love to have on to talk about fresh flour, you were the very first person that crossed my mind. I mean, I really hope someday we actually get to meet because I kind of feel like we're friends, but I really would love
Yeah.
to actually meet. But I think I was thinking about when we quote unquote met with the air quotes. And I think it was back when our books were coming out because we both were with the same publisher.
Oh,
And,
yeah, yeah.
I think yours came out just a few months after mine or something. And ever since then, I've
Mhm.
kind of felt like, we're friends.
Yeah, mine came out right before it was February of 2020, so that book launch kinda got a little bit
Oh.
silly. A little messed up, if you
Yes.
will.
Oh,
Yeah.
man. So mine was
Yeah.
in September the year before. So yeah, I
Okay,
totally
2019,
missed the
yeah.
whole insanity of that. I remember when that hit and me thinking, "Oh, I'm so glad my book was already out."
Yeah, got that under yeah, I know, because I was
Yeah,
trying to do, like, book appearances, and obviously, like,
that
all of
doesn't
that got
work.
canceled. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so fresh flour, like for me, it was a very weird thing for me, and it scared me for a long time, but I don't know if that's the case with you or if you just dove in. Like, what made you even wanna think about using fresh flour in your baking?
So when I first got married, I came into a marriage with very little nutritional, I didn't know anything basically. All I knew was kind of like what the food pyramid said, like we should eat a lot of grains, fats, and fats sparingly. Anyways, a lot of that has changed for me. But
Yes.
I read a book that was called, I believe it was called What the Bible Says About Healthy Living. And
Hmm.
that's when I first started. Yeah, that was like my first introduction before learning about fermenting things and like doing sourdough and all of that. It just basically was about using just from scratch ingredients, as far as I remember. And that's when I got the idea that we should start milling our own grain. This was probably 15 years ago ish.
Wow. So
And
this
I went to
was
oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, I'm sorry. So this was the beginning of your journey with the whole everything you're doing now was fresh flour?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, actually it was. It was the first thing I did. So we went to a homeschool conference and there was a woman there set up. She had a booth called Paula's Bread in St. Louis. Well,
Mhm.
her business isn't in St. Louis, but she came to a homeschool conference in St. Louis.
Okay.
And it's funny because I guess, well, I guess it wasn't 15 years ago because I think my daughter was around 2 when I went to that, which is so funny now that I went to a homeschool conference, which I'm sure a lot of you are like, if you have just a young child, like that makes perfect sense. Just coming from now, I'm like, I can't believe I went to the homeschool conference then, but I was just trying to figure out all of my options and learn about
Yes.
curriculums because I knew we were going to homeschool all the way through. And,
Right.
just because she was only 2 didn't mean that, we weren't committed to it because we were.
Right.
But there was
That's
a
actually the
woman there
age
with a
that
booth.
my oldest daughter was when I first started and when I was committed to it. And I remember, I know what you're talking
Okay.
about. You're head over heels, like, I'm going
Yeah.
to do this right. Meanwhile, it's 4 years down the road and you're like,
Yeah.
but you're
I
just so
know.
on fire about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're just really excited because at the time the newness of the decision is still there. Like
Hmm.
people in your life are still like, "What are you doing?" Now obviously we don't get that pushback because it's clear this is what we're doing. Nobody really
Right.
would need to say anything. Like
Yeah.
we're very solid in that, and I think everybody knows that. But I felt like I had a lot to learn to prove that it was going to be okay. I wanted to prove it to
Yeah.
myself, so I was
Good
very
point.
much in the gathering information stage. And, that was a perfect place to go. But there was a woman there who had a booth, I guess homeschoolers of the same type who also maybe consider making their own bread.
Yes,
She had a
totally.
booth there and she had a Nutrimill and a Bosch mixer on display. And we were so frugal then. I think my husband made like 14 or $15 an hour, So I was
Hmm.
very, very, very frugal.
Yep.
But just running the numbers, it made sense to me that if for the next however many years I am making bread and milling my own grains, this was totally going to pay off because I knew I
Right.
wanted to eat from scratch. And you can't go to the store and get quality breads anyway. But if you did, they're going to be really expensive. So I was totally
Yeah.
sold on it. I bought the Nutrimill, I bought the Bosch mixer, huge investments for our kitchen, and uh, just started with making fresh flour breads with yeast. This was pre sourdough.
Okay.
And
So you
what do you
started
think?
with bread. Because I think bread is
Yeah.
the hardest thing to make with fresh flour. I think it's just fickle. It's hard to see it rise correctly. So good for you.
Yeah.
Wow. And by the
Yeah. That's
way,
what I started with.
I personally think homeschoolers make bread, side note, because like bread is actually not hard to make. It only takes maybe 15 minutes of your day total, but you're spreading it out throughout the day, and you have to have
Yes. You have
these
to kind of be,
moments. You have to
yes.
be
I say
home,
that all the time
right?
about sourdough because sourdough people are like, how do
Yes.
you have the time? Like, oh no,
Yes.
it's not time. It's not time. It's just, I need to go over and visit that dough throughout the day to stretch it, fold it,
Yep.
shape it, put it in the banishins.
Exactly.
But time
Right.
wise, no, that's not a problem. You spend more time. I mean, just on a million other things.
Oh,
There's
totally.
time investment that we're used to doing. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so your bread turned out right? You didn't have a brick in the beginning? Because that's what I had
I'm
lots of
sure I had
bricks.
lots of bricks. Yeah. I don't really recall. Again, it's been so long, but
Yeah.
I guarantee you I had bricks. Absolutely, I had
Okay.
bricks.
Okay.
But we just did a lot of French toast, croutons, breadcrumbs. There's always something you can transform it in. I didn't throw anything away. But yeah,
Definitely. And you didn't have
wasn't
farm animals back then because there's always the farm animals too that can benefit from the bread
yeah.
bricks.
Yeah, not quite. We ended up getting chickens maybe I don't even remember when. The girls were little, but it wasn't probably then. Yeah, because you're right. You could feed it to the animals. I still don't feed that stuff to the animals though. I
Yeah.
still just use it in some way. I love breadcrumbs. I make
Yeah.
this fried chicken that I coat with I toast the bread in cubes, then I put it in my blender and we are just obsessed with it. Like we take just boneless, skinless breast, dip it in egg, and then dip it in the breadcrumbs with some
Hmm.
salt and fry it in tallow or lard. It's so good.
And actually, because it's crazy to me, it's true for me too. Sometimes how simple something can be once I figure out I can do this myself, like breadcrumbs. And I think there's probably
Right.
a good bit of people listening that like they're listening and going, "What, breadcrumbs? What?" So tell us, like literally walk us through it. You cut it up.
Yeah.
Did you put it
Yeah.
in
So
the
you can
oven,
use bread
toaster? How
that's,
do you?
yeah, I put it in I guess you could put it in the toaster. I didn't think about that. It'd probably take a little longer unless you have like a 4 toast toaster.
Right,
That might actually be
right.
really smart though. No, so what I do, and it doesn't have to be bread that hasn't turned out, I actually will even do it with like a perfectly good loaf of bread because that's how much we like it.
Hmm.
But after it's cooled, which, ideally you're just doing this with old bread that you didn't get to and it's kind of sitting, on the counter kind of stale. In that
Yep.
case, just cut it up in cubes, put it in the oven. You don't have to add any butter or anything. Just toast it dry. Once it's like sort of crisp, it'll blend up. So you just I put it in my Ninja blender, blend it up, put it in a jar. How long it lasts? I mean, I've kept it for weeks, but I don't really know. I don't really know. It's
Yeah.
never molded or smelled bad, so we always just use it.
I'm the same way. I know. And I always think, darn it, I should have paid attention to how long that kept. But
I
it's not
know.
something you think about.
No, it's not. It's just that, I use my smell test a lot in my kitchen, If I
Yes.
don't see mold, it doesn't smell, it's
Yep. I'll
good.
look closely. Don't see the
And
mold, then we're
yeah,
using it. Yeah.
and we haven't gotten sick from
I
food
I
poisoning,
mean,
so I guess
same
it
here.
works.
I know, same here.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you
So
can right away mix it with some salt and some like herbs de Provence or Italian
yes.
seasoning, or you can leave them plain and just add that in as you decide what you're going to make with it. Usually I'll just blend them up, pour them in the mason jar, put the lid on, and then if it's fried chicken, I'll pour it in a bowl, add some salt, maybe some herbs, but I use it in meatloaves. I use it for fried chicken. What else? You make like I made eggplant parmesan. you
Mhm.
know,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
honestly is kind of a new thought to me too. I used to like see recipes that had breadcrumbs. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I won't buy breadcrumbs because it's not good bread, and it just never like occurred to me. Oh, I should make that until
Well,
kind of more
you're ahead of me
recently.
because I was buying breadcrumbs until I don't know 5 years ago. I'd never even thought about it. Like it's funny how you can get so anal and set on some one thing, and yet I totally ignore this other thing. Like for me, it was cleaners until recently, and I know you are way
Yeah,
ahead of me on this because your book has fabulous recipes, and I had used some of them, but so many cleaners I was just buying at the store and never thinking about whereas I'm being so careful about my food and then I have the toxic cleaner that I'm using. So,
I mean,
but
there's
on the
just
other
only
hand,
so much you can think about
ex-
sometimes,
totally.
and that's
I agree.
fine. Like
Yep.
you'll make it through that,
Yep.
But
I
yeah,
agree. I agree. So, do you have favorite flowers? Certain flowers that you love to
I
use?
yeah, I just really fall back on like a hard white wheat is
Me
probably my
too.
favorite,
Isn't it
most
boring to say?
versatile.
I feel like it's boring to
Yeah.
say that.
I know. I
It's what I
have
use the
a
most.
jar of einkorn in there. I have a bucket of einkorn in there, and I do use it, but it's just so easy to work with. So when you're in a hurry and you don't really want to baby something, it just works. The protein structure is the same as all purpose. So if you're used
Yep.
to that and you're wanting like a stretchy dough, that really works for everything.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And for me too, like I have more of it and I have it handier. I have to go out to my back hall to get my different wheat berries and I'm just kind of lazy
Yes.
sometimes and I just grab the
Oh
hard wheat
yeah.
because I have it right there.
Well, it's always a good
um
idea in theory, but if something's not really accessible, I'm always in a hurry. Like if, whenever I'm pulling together a meal, it's never like, what should I make today? It's like, let's
yes.
go. We got to get that
Yes.
meal started so that we can start on homeschool or we can, like it's never like I'm just chilling. Like I'm definitely never like wanting to walk out to the garage and get the other berries or anything.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, I'm actually going to like pause for a second because I'm realizing we were chatting before we started recording and I'll spare everyone listening the whole story, but we were delayed in recording, totally my fault. And we just jumped right in. And I want to stop and totally have you introduce yourself. I'm sorry that I was so quick
Oh,
to
that's
jump in.
okay.
So totally tell us about yourself. Tell us about where people, can find you easiest. Tell us about you have this amazing sourdough course that you launched this last summer, I believe, right? Um,
Yeah.
just whatever you want us to know. I'm going to totally sit back and let you just introduce yourself.
Okay, so I'm Lisa Bass. I have a podcast called Simple Farmhouse Life. I blog over at farmhouseonboone.com. YouTube, Farmhouse on Boone. I share a weekly video. And I have 8 kids. We live on a little 7-acre homestead with the dairy cow and chickens. And I'm kind of like, I guess my main niche at this point is sourdough. I do a lot of sourdough. I have a recipe for anything you can think of with sourdough.
You can
That's
Google sourdough
yeah.
anything, and Lisa's pretty much going to be the first resource there.
One of them, yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's pretty much what I do. I spend a lot of time in my kitchen. A lot of times there's kids in there with me where we homeschool. There's toddlers, there's older kids. So there's a wide range of things going on. That's why I silence all my videos and do voiceovers later. People ask
Mm-hmm.
me why. I'm like, and they say your house is so peaceful. I'm like, well, remember that I don't keep the audio. So,
Yep.
that's why it's a normal house with
Yeah.
normal
And it would be
children.
so
So
unfair to your kids to be like, everybody quiet for the next hour.
I used to try those kind of videos and
uh,
it's just so hard. So instead I
yeah.
just collect footage kind of as it's happening and then sit down during afternoon nap like I'm doing right now and record what's happening.
Yeah.
So we just had our 8th baby over the summer and that's pretty much
Yes.
it.
Yes. Well, and I'm so glad that I can't even imagine you're back to recording as soon as you are after having a baby, just because, you're just amazing. You always have amazed me for years when I follow you and all that you do. So thank you for taking the time out to talk to us about fresh flower.
Well, thanks for having
Um,
me.
I have to pause this episode for just a minute to let you know about our sponsor. I am in love with this company. I've been using them for years for teas, and now I go to them all the time for botanicals. Positivelybotanicals.com. A botanical is a plant or a plant part that's valued for its medicinal or therapeutic properties. There are many things that you can do with them, like people will make tinctures and infusions and extracts. And I do a little bit of that. But what I really love the most for using my botanicals is to make teas, to make medicinal, delicious teas. And I drink them iced or warm. If you want to go to soulyrested.com/botanicals, there I give you a savings code for Positively Botanicals, and I link to all my absolute favorite things that I get from them. And this is the best part, I link to all my different recipes of my absolute favorite teas, and some of them have proven to be favorites of you guys as well. I hear from folks often about how these have become their new favorite drinks. So go to soulyrested.com/botanicals to find out more, and absolutely be sure to go check out our sponsor, positivelybotanicals.com. Also, just in case you have missed me talking about this the past few episodes, I'm going to tell you again, you have until April 1st to enter this amazing giveaway. We're giving away a grain mill and a dehydrator and a farm to fork feast of amazing pasture raised meats and so much more. Guys, this giveaway is valued over $3,200. But the most important thing, given the topic of this episode today, is that we're giving away a grain mill. Go to soulyrested.com/free, FREE. Enter every single day. You can even sign up there for a daily reminder so that you don't forget, because you can enter every day from now through April 1st. soulyrested.com/free. And I hope that one of my listeners wins that amazing grain mill. Go check it out. soulyrested.com/FREE. Okay, so you had mentioned stale bread, and that got me thinking that, do you have any other than making it into your breadcrumbs? Do you have other things you do to recommend, like not letting the bread go stale? I mean, with the 8 kids, you probably really don't have that trouble very often. But
Not very
like certain,
much. Yeah, I will say that I had to make a whole bunch of bread for a sourdough photo shoot for a book I'm working on. And I had more loaves of bread than we would eat very quickly. So
yeah,
I put them each in a Ziploc bag and put them in the freezer. And then I've just
yes,
been thawing them out. And the best way to use bread that's been frozen to me is toasting it. It just
hmm,
makes it taste better. But
totally,
yeah, you can,
I
yeah,
agree.
that's that.
And
And
then
I did make some into breadcrumbs.
yeah, I also slice it whenever I see if it's been a couple days and we haven't finished it. I'll slice it into the thickness that I want for whatever I'm going to use it for, and then put it in my Ziploc bags and put it in the freezer. Do you put the whole loaf
Oh.
in there?
I do, but that's a really good
Oh,
idea. I've never really encountered this a whole lot because I never make that much bread, but I like that idea. I do that with bagels. Like when I make sourdough bagels, I cut them in
hmm
half and then freeze them. That way
yes.
you can pop them
You
apart
can
and throw
just
them in the
toast one
toaster.
half. Yes, yes,
Yeah, that's a
totally.
really good idea though, to pre-slice the bread. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And then we can just open the bag, grab a couple and, have a couple slices of
Toast
bread.
it.
So,
Yeah, have it
yeah.
with your eggs in the morning or whatever.
Yeah. Okay. So, Miss Paula, who was at your conference 15 years ago, you were sold on the Nutrimil at that point.
Mhm.
I know I've seen you use other mills though. Like
So yeah,
how do you go
I
about choosing
had
a mill?
well, the Nutrimil was excellent. Nothing ever was wrong with it. It's the reason that I got rid of it is nothing more than I wanted one that sat on my countertop all the time so that I could use it more easily.
Right. I
So
remember you
it's one
had
of
the
those
classic
totally,
Nutrimil, right? You had that white
yeah,
plastic Nutrimil.
yep,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, because there's also the
yeah,
Harvest Mill that Nutrimil makes, because
yes, and it's
that's the one I have,
exactly.
and it's
That's great
gorgeous.
because it's
Yeah,
gorgeous. It sits out on your counter. And I just felt that if it was sitting out on my counter all the time, not taking up space, because the
yeah,
one that I have, it's the mock mill, it's trim. It doesn't have the
yes,
bowl included. You just use whatever bowl you have. And so it's not like this big bulky thing sitting there. I figured I would use it
yes,
more. But totally, like, if it wasn't for a lot of things, like my business is cooking, my business is
yes,
getting on YouTube, doing all that. And so it really financially made sense for me to replace it and have it more accessible. It wouldn't
yeah,
have outside of this business at
yeah,
all. And so I try to make that clear. There was nothing wrong with my Nutrimil. I just felt that it would serve me better for what I'm doing. And that's the
right.
same thing for the reason I switched from the Bosch mixer to the KitchenAid. It was
Hmm.
really just that it was pretty enough and trim enough to sit out all the time. And that way I could constantly use it. And so I gave my Bosch to
Yes.
my aunt, still love it, think it's fabulous. Like
Yeah,
if you have
I
one,
agree.
yeah,
I
don't
totally
replace
agree on
it.
all the things you just said. In fact, the Bosch, I really like it. It's what I'm using now currently, but I don't think it looks nice on my counter. Now, I do
I
like that
know,
it's
right?
light enough. It has a lightweight motor. It's so much lighter than the KitchenAid. It's crazy. So I could put it
Yeah.
away, but I'm not into that. I'm not into putting stuff away that I'm going to use
Well, then I just
almost
don't get
every
it back
day,
out
you
and
know?
use it. That's my
Yeah.
problem. Is like I would
Yeah.
just rather quickly do something else than dig it out of the pantry. Plus, pantry space is very limited. We do have a lot of things that we get out to use like
Yeah.
once or twice a week, but I just wanted one less thing like that. So that's the
Yeah.
only reason why I have what I have. I think both of them work fabulously to grind your grain. They have different settings for, coarse and fine.
Yeah.
I really didn't have any complaints. They're both loud. I mean, neither one of them's
They
quiet. I
are
mean, they're
true.
grinding grain.
Yeah.
So
I
there's
mean,
really
that's
not any
something
way to
people
make
always look at when they're comparing mills, but that was never a concern to me because, like you said, they're all
yeah.
loud. If one's a little
I
more
mean,
quiet
what are
than the
they
other,
doing? They're grinding grain. Like there's just
yeah,
not a way to make that quiet.
there isn't. And
Right?
I will admit, it can go on for a couple minutes and everybody in the house is yelling to talk,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
then you
Same with
turn it
my
off.
mixer. If I'm mixing dough up
Yes.
and it's one of those really hydrated doughs that it takes a while to, form into a ball in the middle and pull away from the sides,
Yep.
it's just loud.
Yeah. Yeah. I will say that I borrowed a friend's. In fact, it was her idea and I was elated. She asked if I wanted to use her mock mill because she knows I do a lot of milling and she's seen my videos with my Nutrimil. And she said, would you like to compare them? And I said, are you kidding? Of course. So it's just like the one you have, the one that she
Oh yeah.
loaned
The
me.
comparison video.
Um, yeah.
Yeah.
And I will say one thing it has that the Nutrimills do not, that wonderful dial at the top where you can very
Okay.
easily choose your number, you know?
Uh-huh.
And because with
Yes.
the Nutrimil, yes, you can dial it, but there's no like number. And I loved it that when I
Okay.
was doing alternative flours, like when I wanted to make cornmeal, I wanted to make chickpea flour, I could open the book that came with the mock mill and it told me a
See
number.
what
I could put that bowl right on the right number and boom,
no
out
guessing
came.
really.
Yes. So I have to say when I don't own the mock mill, but when I borrowed it, I was like, that's a really nice feature. But like you said,
Yeah.
it depends on each person, what's important to them, but they're all good mills. I wouldn't say any of them do a poor job, any of the ones I've used.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's funny because modern day we look at, we have so much information. So we read every single review and it's like this really big
Yes.
thing. Whereas like I bought my mill just kind of on a whim because Paula said it was great. Like there was no other way to do it. There wasn't even internet. I mean, there was internet. I just didn't use it that much. Like there was
Right.
internet, obviously. But what I mean is like buying everything online wasn't a thing like it is now.
I know, totally. And we have so much information overload. I think we really suffer
Yeah.
from it. I mean, it's much
Hmm.
better to just talk to Paula. I mean, seriously.
Yeah, like Paula, you tell me Paula was a homeschool mom. She had a bunch of kids.
Hmm.
She'd been baking bread for all this time. She didn't do sourdough. It was just like yeast. And she said she could have a loaf of bread on the table in less than an hour. And I was like, that's cool.
Hmm.
So I just went
Well,
with
I need to
Paula.
talk to Paula because I haven't figured that out yet.
Well, she didn't do 2 rises. She just like made the dough,
Okay.
put it in the pans, and did 1 rise. She did use like a dough enhancer, and I bought all of it at the time. Like I had like this dough conditioner or enhancer stuff. It probably wasn't
Hmm.
really that
Hmm.
great, but it
Was
was
that like
definitely
extra
like made from
gluten
fresh
or
flour.
something? I don't even know what that
I
is.
wonder that. I don't know what
Huh.
it was. Maybe
Huh.
it was extra gluten. I'm not sure,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
it made good bread.
Now, what about, do you always grind your wheat berries on demand? Like you can just make the amount of flour that you want right there on your counter?
For the most part, I will sometimes, overshoot it, and then I'll just keep a little jar that I can
Yeah.
use for the next time I'm making bread.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I
then
try.
you
I
keep
try to.
because you're going to be using it soon, you probably don't worry about refrigerating that little jar, right?
I don't, but yeah, if you plan to keep it long term, or you made a whole bunch extra, which I wouldn't really recommend if you already have all the setup to just do it fresh.
Right.
But yeah, I'll just keep a little jar like sitting right there next to where I make my bread, so I'll just use it next time, which isn't
Yeah.
very long.
Yeah. Yeah. I also always have a jar of rice flour, which I originally didn't know. Do you use rice to clean out your mill? Sometimes, occasionally?
No, I think I did hear that at one point, but I don't know that I've done it. I should do
Okay.
that.
It's nice to do just once in a while because it just gets your, what the heck are they called? Stones. A really hard word.
Uh-huh.
It gets
Yeah.
your stones just cleaned off of any debris
Because they
that's
don't
left
have
in
the
there.
bran, really. Is that why?
Yes, I guess so. And it comes out
Okay.
this nice, beautiful, white, fine rice flour. And I used to just throw that away. But now, whenever I do that to clean my stones, I actually keep a jar of my rice flour and I'll use that for like dusting because it's so much, cost per ounce cheaper
Yeah.
than the good stuff. So I'll use that for dusting if I'm, putting stuff on my
Well, and
counter or whatever.
you're supposed to dust like Banneton liners with rice flour. And it's funny
Oh,
because I've
I've
thought
never
to
used a
myself,
Banneton. Can I just say it?
oh,
I've never
okay.
used one.
Oh yeah, that's fine.
But
People recommend using rice flour and not using more flour, which is
uh-huh.
funny because I'm like, oh, I don't want to stock rice flour. It never occurred to me that I should just put a little rice through my mock mill. Like that
Well,
makes a
yeah,
lot
and
of
it's dual
sense.
purpose then. It's cleaning out your
Yeah,
mill
cleaning it.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and I just
I
keep that
always
in a
have
mason
rice.
jar. I just keep it in a mason
Yeah.
jar in my cabinet for like we were talking about the breadcrumbs. I don't know how long I kept it. I know it's been
Yeah.
many weeks
Yeah.
or a month, and it's fine. So,
Uh-huh. So
yeah.
like dusting if you're gonna roll out like a cookie dough or just anything on your counter, you'll just
Exactly. To
dust.
dust your
Oh, that's a
counter.
good idea.
Exactly. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Smart.
Um So, any tips before we close out our talk? Any tips for somebody who's never used fresh flour, never had a Paula in their life that showed him a mill? I don't know, anything at all that you would say?
Well, get some hard white berries. The reason we say that is because the gluten structure is the same, where it's like an ancient grain, like spelt or einkorn or kamut. It takes a little bit more finesse to work with them. They're more like closely related, so you can just do like one for one substitution. Man, what are some of my other tips for working with them? If you want to start and you haven't even made bread before, maybe don't go all whole grain at first. Maybe do a portion of whole grain. I still honestly prefer that taste, even though it's not healthier to do it that way. I
Mhm.
still like to just do like a portion of it, so you still get that
I
good
agree.
rise. And yeah,
I agree. I always tell people that. Plus, the family isn't going to probably like dramatically switching from Wonder Bread to whole wheat, fresh flour.
yeah,
They're just not going to like
right,
it. So, do it
yeah,
gradually. I always recommend that. Yeah. And it makes it a little
yeah,
easier for you. Yeah. And I also tell people, unlike Lisa, who's amazing, that can just start right out of the gate with bread, to if you want to get experience with fresh flour, start with some baked goods, do some chocolate chip cookies or other things with your fresh flour. And for that, you want to use soft wheat berries because that's the better one for baking versus the hard for your bread. But play around with the soft wheat berries and make some cookies and other things and get the family used to that little bit different taste before you kind of dive into the bread. That's another option that I sometimes
yeah. And
recommend
it's
to
a
people
sweet
too.
thing, so they're gonna like it, right?
Exactly, exactly. Put a few extra chips, extra chocolate chips.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so before we wrap it up, Lisa, I want to rapid fire a few questions at you because I know so many people know Lisa Bass, but I would love to ask some questions of you that people might not know to get another glimpse into the other side of Lisa. So are you game? Just a couple questions?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. How about your favorite music genre?
Oh man, I like whatever my husband plays me, honestly. But
Okay.
we like folk, like Bob Dylan, and
Okay.
yeah, that genre I would say the most. But he's the music guy, and so he always has so many different artists playing.
Yeah.
I
And
should
you
have
just
asked him
respect
this.
his taste. So you go with it.
I always like it. Yeah, I like
Yeah.
it. I don't really like um I'm a Christian, but I don't really like modern Christian music at
I
all.
know exactly what you mean. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I like old
Um,
hymns a lot, though. I do really like old hymns.
yeah, I do too. We don't hear them enough. I agree with you. And I will admit there were some songs that when my kids were younger, I really debated because there's even some hard rock songs that Bill and I, my husband, really love and would put on. And I'd kind of be like, you guys need to understand what they're talking about in this song is not right. And it was in some
Yeah,
ways, it's kind of good to have this little bit of a
yeah,
talk about morality and why this is wrong. I mean, and just admit that, but we really like the music. So I don't know.
yeah. I
Some
understand that. I
people
was
will
listening
judge
to
me very harshly because I just said that, I'm sure.
I know it. I know it. I like country too, but not really like
Yes,
on the radio country.
I agree.
Um,
If I had to
yeah.
say one genre, I think I would say country if I had to just quickly
I love
give an
country.
answer.
Yeah. I don't know why I didn't say that first. If there's a fiddle in it, I love it. See, that's
Mm,
the one genre my husband doesn't really like, but I do. Like if I'm in the kitchen
gotcha.
cooking, and I had a whole bunch of kids even today in the kitchen cooking, and we had the little like speaker thing on,
Yep.
and we were
Mhm.
doing country.
I love
Yeah.
it. I love it. That's so fun. Like that's the best memories to create with a kid to like be dancing while you're making the cookies and the music's blaring. I love it.
Yeah, we were making pumpkin pie. So
Ooh, I love it.
yeah.
Okay, so do you have a favorite classic novel? Favorite book?
Oh man. I have probably not read any classic novels in my entire life.
There's no time,
Yeah.
huh?
I'm sure there
Uh,
is time, but
See, I think you would be a
I'm
Jane
not a
Austen kind of
reader.
person.
I don't know.
No.
I don't
Okay.
know. I wouldn't know. I hear people talking about it, like, yeah, I'm going to do that. And when I read, I like nonfiction. Like currently, I'm reading Knowledge of the Holy by A.W. Tozer, mostly
Oh,
because my
Tozer's
husband's like, we should read this together.
fantastic.
We should read this together.
Oh, that's
And
awesome. Bill
so,
is not a reader. I'm so jealous. That's
oh,
awesome.
see,
Tozer's
I'm not,
fantastic.
but he is. And so,
Mm.
I just, I wish I like that people like novels. That seems really fun. I'm just not a reader.
Well, you just put me to shame because I'm here thinking, oh, I really like Pride and Prejudice, and you're talking about Tozier. So I mean, I love it. Though.
I mean, I'm like
Fantastic.
one or two chapters in. All right, like
Yeah.
this is really special that I'm reading a book right now.
Well, I'm very impressed. Well, look, I mean, you're holding
Thanks.
the bundle of joy that's keeping you from being able to read a book. uh, okay.
Yeah.
Do you watch movies at all? If so, do you have a favorite movie?
We do watch movies. I really like documentaries, but if
Hmm.
I don't know, I fall asleep during movies really bad. But I really like documentaries. So that's just more of a
Yeah.
genre, but I don't have a favorite. It's
No,
probably in the
but
same category as the books. Like I'm just not like a
yeah.
movie person.
Well, okay. Well, then what about your favorite way? Last question to kind of waste time. If you actually had
Okay.
time to waste, which I know you probably don't, what would you do?
I could think of a lot of ways. I would like probably going somewhere with my sister and a few of our kids, maybe not all of them. Maybe out to breakfast and shopping or something.
Oh, that sounds fun. I love it.
It just came to my brain
Perfect.
just like that. I'm
That's
like, yep, that's what
perfect.
I do.
That's perfect. I think you should make the time with your sisters and do it. I love it. I saw you shared a picture
Yeah.
recently that you were all together with your newborn or youngest kids. So
Yes, we
sweet.
all had all three of my sisters and I, four had a baby in less than a year's time.
That's so awesome. Those cousins are going to be such good friends. I love it.
Yeah, yeah.
I love it. Well, Lisa, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with Fresh Flower. And people are going to, that I'm sure everybody listening probably knows you, but if not, one more time where they can find you.
Okay, so as far as podcasts, I have the Simple Farmhouse Life podcast,
Oh
and
my
then
goodness.
farmhouseonboone.com is my hub.
Why haven't we mentioned the podcast? That should have been right.
I think I did. Yeah, I mentioned it.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely everybody needs to find you in those places. Thank you, Lisa.
Yeah.
This
Thank you
was
so much
fun.
for having me.
Absolutely.
So I hope you loved getting some insights into the other side of Lisa Bass and enjoyed our conversation about fresh flower. Don't forget solelyrested.com/free for the amazing giveaway. And maybe you could earn or win, I should say, a grain mill. And solelyrested.com/flower for all the free resources about fresh flower. And I think that's it. Thanks for listening, guys. And remember, it's easy to forget how blessed we are to live this life. So enjoy the simple everyday efforts. It's not easy, but it's a good life.